All right. Well, hello, Edmonton, and hello, wherever else you are. I'm in Vancouver right now, but about a year ago, I did speak at the Mogul Mastermind in Edmonton, and we had a great turnout and we had lots of fun. And I was just dying to go back, and I'm thrilled that James said, come, let's do a Zoom meeting. So the only thing I miss is seeing everybody. Like sometimes when I do Zoom meetings, I can see everybody that's participating and we kind of go eyeball to eyeball, but oh, well, you can look at my eyeballs. But anyway, what we're going to talk about tonight is stay on theme, identifying, selecting, analyzing great deals. As James so nicely said, I have bought a lot of real estate. I'm still an active investor. In fact, today I tied up a 17 unit building, so I'm all excited. So I'll be extra extroverted tonight. I've trained over 3,500 active real estate investors. I don't know how many millionaires I've made, but I've made a lot. And that's very gratifying to me. I bought and sold over 4,800 residential units personally and with joint venture partners. And I'm still active, but mostly I do multifamily because multifamily, I get the most bang for my buck. And so, you only have limited time. So do whatever you do best and do what gives you the biggest bang for your buck. Between 2004 and 2011, one of my specialties was buying strata title buildings and then slicing them up and selling the individual strata units to investors. And this was fun. We did make money, but what I found was it was hard for the investors to exit because you'd have a building that was full of renters because the investors would buy one out of 50 units and I would find 50 investors. So we would each own units, and I still own some units in those buildings in various cities in BC. And so anyway, the exit is tricky. They do have long-term cash flow. I was a bit surprised by the market that the smaller towns in BC did not appreciate the same way that Vancouver did. So anyway, around 2010, 2011, I took that and smartened up and moved into buying and hold. So now with myself and my joint venture partners, we've done over 3,000 units that some we have bought and we've sold. I'll talk about that a little bit later tonight, but mostly held. And it's kind of funny, if you asked me how many units I own and you held a gun to my head, you would probably shoot me because I really don't keep track. It's like, what's the point? I think there's seeing as we're talking to Edmonton, there's a country western song, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. Well, I know when to run. I'm going to teach you how to analyze a deal in 2 minutes, but I'm going to sit there and, know when to hold them and fold them and not count my money. I'm just going to keep the eye on the poker game. But this is kind of funny because it says 2012 to 2017. I really should update that because it is 2020, right? So I will do that for my next presentation. But I'm still at it. And let's talk some real estate. This was my favorite game as a kid, Monopoly. Let's build some hotels. Um, so to identify, select, and analyze properties, you need to answer these questions. One is, what's your main goal? Are you going to flip, or do you want this thing for long-term passive income? Because it makes a difference when what you're looking for, and when you see it, it's easy to identify. But if you're like, oh, I'll take a passive income, I'll take a flip, I'll take anything, you're just less and less sort of good at analyzing the deal and recognizing that it's a good deal. Typically what I do is I look for something that I don't mind holding for a long time, but I want it to have some kind of flip potential. So that gets into what I call the multiplier effect, where I can increase the net operating income. And for a property that has a 6% rate of return, if I can increase the income by $1 a month, which works out to $12 a year, and that goes to the bottom line, which increases usually do because the taxes don't change and the amount of money you spend on utilities doesn't change much. That 12 bucks at a 6% cap rate increases the value of your building by 200 bucks. So that one little dollar a month increased the value of my building by 200 bucks. That to me is exciting. So when I look for passive income, I look for a way that I can get that multiplier effect to go in there and reduce expenses, increase the rents, find an investor or an owner that's asleep at the wheel, and make some money that way. But I will not go in and buy an overpriced turkey for a high price, hoping that I'll get higher, because you get killed that way. And I want to stay alive and live to do another deal another day. So be very crystal clear whether you're a flipper or passive income, or do the hybrid that Ralph does of hybriding passive income that you'll flip later. And then figure out where you're going to buy. It's really important to know where you're going to buy, because you have to become an expert on the particular area, and then what kind of property. So to analyze, you identify, know what you're looking for, you select it, you tie it up or you don't tie it up. So number one, know what you're looking for so that when you see it, you glom onto it. Number two, tie it up or don't tie it up. And then once it's tied up, then you do your analysis. If you spend all your time doing your analysis before you tie it up, and it's a good deal, somebody's going to come buy it out from under you. So tie it up first, then do your analysis. In section 1, you do a quick analysis to know whether it's worth your time tying up. Don't tie up everything you see. You have to have some certain parameters for what you do tie up, but leave most of the analysis for after you have it under contract. And you can even leave the negotiation for after you have it under contract. Once it's bought, in terms of tying up under contract, you can go back when you find that the roof needs replacing, or the elevator needs servicing, or the boiler needs replacing. You can go back and what we call retrade, and you say, listen, Mr. Seller, we agreed on $1.5 million, but you need a new roof. So I want $100,000 off, or $150,000 off. And the power of that is that you've been doing your analysis for a month or two, and the guy's pretty much in his head sold the building. Then you come back and say, I'm not going to buy it unless you reduce the price. He's got a choice. He's got to put it back on the market and wait a couple more months, or you're sitting there with a check in your hand and he can take the check and it's done. So it's a very powerful negotiation tool. So some of you are multifamily investors, some of you aren't. I don't know, some of you may own some properties, some of you may have yet to buy a property, but the thing that is important in real estate is that the magic happens outside your comfort zone. You're always growing a little bit, and then once you do something out of your comfort zone, it starts to become your comfort zone. Like your comfort zone grows. But none of us, whether it's James or myself or anybody else, that I run into, is totally comfortable all the time. Like if you're comfortable, be careful, because you should be uncomfortable. You should always watch for surprises and dig under, things that you don't think, that most people may not dig under. So do your due diligence. Always be wary, but just understand that the more deals you do, the more comfortable you are doing them. So whether it's the first house you buy, the second one will be easier, the third one will be easier. Same thing with apartment buildings. First one you buy, the second one will be easier. So have a laser beam focus of where you're going to buy. I only buy in 4 cities. And the reason I buy in those cities is because I have boots on the ground. I have joint venture partners that are just killer. I've got James in Edmonton. Okay, James, you're the only male boots on the ground I have. I've got Katie in Ontario, and I've got Denise in Phoenix, and Saromi in downtown Eastside Vancouver. And they're all just really strong women, and they're super smart, and I just rely on them because they work really hard and we get a lot done. And I'm investing with James in an apartment building in Edmonton, and I totally love his work ethic, and I love his street smarts for finding a deal that we're going to make some money, and we're going to make this multiplier effect work for us. But that's the key, is I've got somebody there that does the boots on the ground, because I want to be retired. Like I'm at the investor point now. I advise, but I don't do the boots on the ground work. I don't do the property management. I never buy unless I've identified a good property manager in the city that I'm going to buy in. And so, yes, there are parameters of the city that it has to make sense with certain parameters. Like I look for, Ontario, I'm not going to name the city, but the place I invest there, it's about 75,000 people, and just like it's a hopping town. It has multiple industries, and it's just solid as a rock. And the great thing about Ontario is there's millions and millions of people within like a 24-hour drive. Like it's huge population base. So you're never going to have to worry about vacancies as long as you can outmanage the people across the street. Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the US. It's got golf, it's got sunshine. And for all of you that have been to Vancouver, there are days that we don't have sunshine. So I love Phoenix to go escape, even though the border is closed now and they've got a COVID-19 crisis down there. I haven't been there in a few months, but at least I know I can go down there. And then there's Vancouver and Prince George, BC. I've got a great boots on the ground gal there too. And I've bought a couple of brand new houses. And what else have I bought there? Oh, an apartment building. So like Prince George, like Edmonton, just about any place in Ontario is hard to go wrong because it's got such a strong population base. I should caveat that Southern Ontario, I'm not a big fan of Sudbury or places up in the boonies, but if you've got a good solid town in Ontario, you're going to do well. And so those are my places. Like, why do I need any more? And why would I go look someplace else when I've got my team? I'm very sort of risk averse. And I know what a good deal is. Like, I know those markets backwards and forwards. So when somebody comes with me with a deal, I don't have to research the market and make sure it's a good deal. I just say, yeah, that's a good deal. Let's do it. Or no, it's not a good deal. So what next? Let's move on to the next one. So give a lot of thought to where you're going to buy, and don't pick too many places. Like, just become the expert so that you are on top of the market and you know when a deal shows up that it's a good deal. And it can be anywhere. Like, I just have mine. It doesn't mean those are the 4 best places to invest in North America. It means that those are the 4 places that I have super people that, like, I would literally trust with my life. Like, they are so trustworthy. They're so hardworking. They're so smart. And they are nice to me because I've mentored them and I've made them a lot of money and they've made me lots of money. So it's a nice synergistic relationship. And if you can find relationships like that, it's wonderful. Some people are lone wolves. I'm more of a team player because my theory is if you get 50% of something, it's better than 100% of nothing. And so when people come to me with deals and I don't have money, I'll just go find a joint venture partner to put up the money, and I'll give them a generous portion of the proceeds, and we'll make money and we'll go on and do more. And that allows me to multiply myself and do more deals without totally draining my bank account. Okay, so these are what I look for. Job growth is great. They say that people go where jobs grow, and then values grow where people go. So job growth is probably number 1. A lack of supply. If they aren't building, that's a good sign that prices are going to go up. And if you see prices below replacement cost, so you can buy a house for less than it costs to build a house, that's probably a good market to buy. When I first went into Southern Ontario in 2015, you could buy a house for like $100,000. You know, it wasn't in Toronto, it was like a couple hours outside of Toronto, but still, you know, that's unbelievable. It would rent for $1,000, $1,200 a month. And since then, in 5 years, they've doubled. And we put like 15, 20% down. So you think, okay, that's pretty good math. So that's like, what, 7 times, you know, what your down payment was? Well, that's pretty good. And so when I went there and started shopping, I'm like, I'm not just going to buy 1, I'm going to buy 5. No, I'll buy 7. What the hell? So I'm going to give them to my kids in their Christmas stockings. But yeah, I was just blown away. So if you can find stuff below replacement cost, it's in a good, strong economic market that's solid and stable, and you've got a pretty good chance of finding tenants, go for it. I like places that have future growth potential. So if it's a 1-horse town and the mine is running out of minerals, it's probably not a future growth potential kind of place. But if it's a high-tech mecca, if they have lots of immigration for one reason or another, then that does have future growth. So look for that. Infrastructure is things like highways. Just to give you an example of Vancouver, when they built the SkyTrain out to Surrey prices doubled. You know, it just, the market went crazy. When they built the Coquihalla Highway to Kelowna prices went up dramatically. When they build the aluminum smelter, they rebuild it in Kitimat went crazy. So, you know, all these things where there's infrastructure, prices go up. And I like a large population because if you have a large population, you can just outmanage the guy across the street and keep your building full. If you're in a little 1-horse pony town in northern Alberta or northern BC and the mill closes or the price of commodities goes down, you're stuck because everybody moves out of town. And no matter how good a property manager you are, your place will be empty and you'll be sucking wind. But if it's in a place like Edmonton or Prince George or Phoenix or Southern Ontario, you've got a large population, you hit hard times, all you got to do is outmanage the guy across the street. There are people that have to live somewhere, and if you're a good manager, you'll survive. And you know, this kind of brings a point has nothing to do with large population, but it has to do with survival. And that is this whole COVID-19 thing. Uh, when it happened in March, like I was freaked out. What's going to happen April 1st? Like, are my tenants going to pay the rent? Like, and then the government, the premiers all come out and say, oh, nobody can be evicted for not paying rent. And I just like, oh, what? So that's, I don't know whether it was large population or whatever, but I managed to escape unscathed. It was really surprising that everybody came through and paid their rent. But if I had been in a little small town and something like COVID-19 happened and the government said that you don't have to pay your rent, I think I would have been a lot more vulnerable. Number 7 and the final one, and gee, I said job growth was the most important. This is the most important. This is the one where you have the personal strategic advantage. You've got the boots on the ground. You've got a comfort level. It might be the town you grew up in. You might have family there, somebody that you can trust implicitly. You've got a good property manager, just some kind of strategic advantage. It makes all the world of difference if you're investing out of the area where you live in. And that's the final point is, as a beginning investor, one of the most important things you have to learn is you don't necessarily have to invest where you live. Invest where it's the best place to invest. Go seek out a joint venture partner. Like, I don't want to live in Ontario. Sorry, James, but I don't want to live in Edmonton. But I want to invest there because they're great places to invest. Like, everybody's going, why would you invest in Edmonton? I'm going to invest in Edmonton because there's blood in the streets. I mean, literally, it's not as bad as it has been sometimes in the past, but it's challenged. But that's the time you go in and you get the deals, is when people are challenged, people are trying to escape the market. You don't go into a market when things are booming and the taxi driver is telling you about all his real estate investments as he's driving you from the airport. Like, that's not the time to buy real estate. I remember I bought a building in Kamloops in 2003, 2004, something like that. And I had to go into the engineer's office. And so it was 48 units. And we bought them for like $30,000 a door. And I go into this office and this guy's sitting there in the chair while I'm waiting for the engineer. And he goes, why would you want to invest in Kamloops? Like, what? Why? And I just went, all right, I'm in the right place. Like, this is awesome. And those $30,000 condos went to $120,000 each in a matter of like 3 years. It was crazy. But, be the contrarian. If people are telling you, why are you doing this? That should be music to your ears. If you have firm convictions and you have firm evidence that the market should be good, like, you keep an eye on all these points that I've made. And the good thing about Zoom is you guys can just take screenshots. Hallelujah, you don't have to take notes. Okay, here's the next laser beam. After you know where you're going to invest, what are you going to invest in? So is it going to be multifamily, duplex, triplex, vacant land, recreation property, Airbnbs, fourplexes? Like, there's so many things we can invest in, but you got to focus and you got to specialize. You got to be good at one thing. So don't be the jack of all trades. Just say, hey, my wheelhouse where I'm going to hit it out of the park is single family homes with suites. Like, I think James has hundreds of them. The guys, that's in his wheelhouse. If I was ever to go to Edmonton and want a single family house with a suite, he's the guy I would call. My wheelhouse is multifamily buildings, like between probably 20 to 50 units. I don't like much bigger than that because they just become too risky. There's too much debt. I don't want a $7 million mortgage, man. I feel comfortable with a $2 million mortgage. But, once these mortgages get so high, it's like stuff goes wrong. Like, I want to, number one, when I go into a real estate deal, first thing that goes through my head is I want to survive. I want to be risk averse. I want a good deal, but, if I have the choice between making a lot of money or surviving, I will take surviving any day of the week. So what's the term that pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered? Don't be a hog, just be a little piggy and look for your nice rates of return. Focus on what you're going to buy and become an expert on that, and look for what might be the best buy in the area you've decided on. So number one, pick the area, then go into that area and say, okay, I'm going to specialize in this. So the funny thing in Ontario is I just, stumbled upon Katie. We were both speaking at a real estate conference, and I started to mentor her, and went out and to her hometown and started looking at houses, and they're so cheap, and I said, well, geez, if you want a joint venture partner, I'll joint venture partner. So we ended up buying the houses together, and then just fluke, I was sitting on the couch one night and an apartment building came up for sale on ICI, the not MLS.com, but the ICI channel. And I ended up buying an apartment building there. You never know where the path is going to lead. So we bought houses because those were the best things to buy there. But then when an apartment building showed up that was gift wrapped and a super deal, we ended up making $1 million on that apartment building. We sold it early January this year in just a little less than 5 years. So woot, woot, woot. Pays to buy out of the area where you live and to focus on what you do best. Okay, can you hear me, James? I guess he's muted. I hope you guys can hear me. I think he would be texting me if you guys couldn't hear me. It's kind of weird when you...
We can hear you loud and clear. I was muted, sorry.
Okay. Is it good? Are you okay?
I think, everybody send Ralph some love in the comments section. So I totally get it. Ralph spent years and years and years presenting to audiences in person where he can get some feedback and he knows how everybody's doing. And this whole Zoom thing is definitely different. I know as a presenter, I presented hundreds of times in person and maybe 10 or 15 times over Zoom. And there's something to be said for having a real live audience that you can get some feedback from. So yeah, let's give Ralph a little love at the halfway point here because he's doing an awesome job and we appreciate it.
I have a fear of small crowds. Anyway, it's the next thing we have to think about is when we're going to invest. And this is funny because so many people look at statistics and they analyze statistics, and the listings are doing this and the sales are doing this, and oh my God, compared to last year, we're up 10% or down 3%. To me, it doesn't make any difference. This graph here is of the Vancouver market from 1980 to about 2018. And you look at the big picture, like look at that curve. Like, did you get hurt if you bought in a downswing of that curve? No, you didn't. So, usually the real estate curve is pretty steady going up. I know Calgary and Edmonton may have a little bit more variations, and you're probably able to buy in the dips a little bit more. And I'm up there in Edmonton right now buying in a dip. But, for the most part, if you have the long-term attitude that you're going to buy a nice cash flowing property and hang on to it for, 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to be fine. So quit looking at the statistics and just get out there and buy again and buy again and buy again, because, the more properties you own, the more you're getting the advantage of compound growth and the more advantage you're getting of leverage. And so say you buy one house that's worth $500,000. If you can engineer it, which is easy to do, talking to a guy like James that owns like 100, is why not own 4? And then you've got $2 million. So if it appreciates 6% a year, instead of having like a $60,000, 6% of 500,000 would be like 30,000. So say it appreciates $30,000 in a year. If you've got 4 of them, that's 120,000 a year. So buy more. The younger you are, the more real estate you should buy. The older you are, the less debt you should have, just to be risk averse. So when you're young, you can recover. You can get wiped out. You can get on your feet again, and you can do it again. When you're older, it's like, oh man, I got to do this again. No, I want to go to Hawaii. Forget it. I'm not doing this again. So, but anyway, my point here is don't get caught up on the local statistics for the most part. Like when the market's bad, that's a good time to buy. When the market's good, it's still a good time to buy because it might get better, right? You don't know that the market's going to go down, but if it does go down, typically these cycles are only like 3 to 5 years, something like that. Like, just make sure you have some extra cash flow. You've got some kind of another income stream that will pave your way through any hardship, and you'll be good. Learn to recognize cycles and have the patience to reap rewards when cycles go up. And this is kind of the tale of two cities, that different cities have different cycles. So, You might have Edmonton and Calgary are in slightly different cycles where one is dipping and the other one is rising. But typically, the two Alberta cities will be more or less in sync, but they will be different from Toronto and Vancouver. So keep an eye on where your particular city is in the cycle if you do choose to pick the cycles to invest in. Or if you're, like I said earlier, investing not in the place you live, if you're going to invest in Calgary or Edmonton or Toronto or Winnipeg or Saskatoon, wherever it is, look for where they're sitting in the market. Like ask for one of these graphs. This is an MLS graph. You ask your realtor, they'll give you a graph like that, and you can just kind of see the patterns. Like Vancouver's got a really nice graph. Some of the other cities may have ones that fluctuate a little bit more. But keep that in mind, that's made me a lot of money, is knowing that City A and City B are different areas in the cycle, and I don't have to invest where I live. I just go where I can make some money. That's what I like to do, because otherwise I might as well just sit on the couch and drink chamomile tea if I'm not making money, right? Okay, so the final one is we got to focus on how. Okay, Ralph, it's real easy. I figured out where I'm going to invest and what I'm going to invest in and when I'm going to invest, but what do I do? How? Well, one of the important things is to have a business plan. And it can be a one-page business plan. It can be a 30-page business plan. But it's really important that you have a plan that you just say, look, I'm going to buy so many houses in so many years. This is the amount of down payment I have. So realistically, this is how many houses I can buy unless I bring in joint venture partners. But if you are going to bring in joint venture partners, that's part of the plan. And you think, how can I bring in joint venture partners? I don't know how to do that. Well, talk to James Cannell, because he is my shining example of someone that learned how to do joint venture partners and basically taught himself. He went out and just asked people if he could do his presentation for them if they promised they wouldn't buy, so that he could practice his presentation. I thought this was brilliant. And then he just gives like 100 presentations, and finally he starts getting really good, and they go, well, I know I said I wouldn't buy, but can I buy? James, you're always on my hero list for that little thing. I wish I was as smart as you. Me, I did it the hard way. I just did it myself, and then eventually started doing multifamily and just did joint venture partnerships with multifamily just because I had such a good track record. That helped too. But I didn't realize that I could have started with no track record, just going out there and just presenting to a bunch of people and saying, I promise, I won't ask you to buy. Just listen to my presentation. Like, brilliant. Anyway, so focus on the business plan, figure out what you're going to buy, those same things I talked about, where, when, look at the end result of what sort of appreciation you expect, pick like a 6% appreciation. And then it's really exciting because you've got your plan. Like this is what Katie and I did when we started buying in Ontario. She was a little bit unfocused about what she wanted to do. I said, we're going to make a 5-year plan. I said, this is what happens when you buy 5 houses in 5 years. Holy crap. You make a lot of money if you start appreciating at 6% a year. And then the actual was, because the houses were so cheap, like we bought 5 in a year. And then at the end of like 3 years, we doubled. And at the end of 5 years, like, it's just amazing. We're going to renegotiate our mortgages now. And the mortgages are like, 1.5% lower than the original rates we had. So it's beautiful, but it's a plan. And we executed the plan to perfection. But if we didn't have that plan, we never would have done anything. Like you got to have a plan and you got to follow it. So, speaking of plans, when we had the real estate action group meeting in January, I stood up in front of everybody and I had 10 pounds of butter on a table. Actually, I picked it up and I dropped it on the table. If you ever hear 10 pounds of butter drop, it's pretty nice noise, like boom. And then when I have the microphone on, it's even better. It's like boom. Everybody's like, what the hell? And then I put this picture of the scale up that I weighed 221 pounds after Christmas. This was not good, because I should be a lot lighter. So I said, listen, I don't want this, 10 pounds of butter. I got a plan. I'm going to start walking. I'm going to start exercising. I'm going to start eating better. And I'm going to lose 10 pounds. So drum roll. I started walking 8.7 kilometers a day. So this is a graph of January, February, March, April, May, June. So in May, I did 8.7 average per day. June, I probably did about 9.5 kilometers a day average. So I gradually ramped it up. So that was my plan, right? I'm going to lose some weight. I got to do something. I got to go out there and do something different than I'm doing now. Same thing if you're going to buy a house and you haven't bought a house in 20 years. Well, you got to do something different. You got to start looking for relationships with realtors, with property managers. You got to start talking to investors. You got to get out and do something. But anyway, so there's my plan. And as of last month, when I stood up in front of the group, I was 207. So I lost 14 pounds. Woo! So whether you're buying houses, whether you're losing weight, whether you're doing anything, I'm a big believer in plans. So here we get to the how. That was a bit of a digression. Sorry about that. But for you folks that want to lose a little weight, get out there and walk. It's great. And, you know, you get to do lots of planning while you're walking around. So this is my system. How do I buy real estate? Well, first we target where we're going to buy, and then we got to find some deals. So you know what you're looking for. That helps you find deals. If you're looking for a single family house, apartment building, could be realtors that are sending you deals, could be accountants, could be lawyers. You could be walking around neighborhoods knocking on doors, but you got to find deals, and then you have to evaluate them quickly. And so I'll get more into how I evaluate them in a few minutes, but once you evaluate it and it's a green light, you write the offer. So there are 2 steps in negotiation. This is negotiation step 1. Just write the offer, tie it up. If you think you're paying a little bit too much, don't worry about it too much, but you know, don't go crazy. Like, you don't want to write an offer and then find there's a whole bunch wrong with it, and then you've spent money on your due diligence and the guy says, no, I'm not going to negotiate. Like, it has to be in the ballpark. So write the offer. Don't get too caught up on you're going to get the best absolute price. And then you start doing your due diligence. As I mentioned earlier, if you do your due diligence before you write the offer and it's a good deal, somebody's going to come in and buy it right out from under you. So do the due diligence after you write the offer. And don't do your financing before the due diligence, because for financing, you have to do things like pay for appraisals. You have to pay a mortgage broker a fee of a few $1,000s. And all this stuff is down the drain if it blows the due diligence. Like, yeah, you get this great mortgage and you've paid $2,500 to CMHC and $2,000 to the mortgage broker, and then you find that the building sucks. Well, that money's down the drain. It's better to figure out the building is good. Then you pay the financing people to do the deal, and you just write the contract such that it extends. Like, okay, you've done your due diligence, then you get another 30 days to get the financing done. It's the way you write the deal. And then after that, you get to the retrade. So you're all set to go. You've got your financing approved. You've done your building inspection. You've analyzed it. The building's good, but you still think you should get a better deal. So you go in and you negotiate for a retrade. So I've had buildings where I've gone in and retraded and gotten $400,000 off of a price of $2 million, which is pretty significant. No, sorry, I think it was, it was more like a $4 million price. I got $400,000 off. So that was cool. And then there was another one where we asked for $300,000 off and they gave us 30, and we took it anyway. And it was funny. That was a project called Coulter Meadows down in Phoenix. And it was right next to Grand Canyon University. And it was an off-market deal. We bought it. And Grand Canyon University came to us a month later and paid us $1 million more than what we had paid for it. And we said yes, but that's when you don't get too hung up. Well, they didn't give me the $300,000 off, but I made $1 million in a month, so that's okay. At least they gave us 30. If you don't ask, you don't get anything. So go ahead and ask. And the cool thing about doing it at this point, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm sorry I repeat myself, but I think the more times I repeat these things, the more you absorb them. But if you're sitting there with, you've been analyzing this deal for 2 months, and the owner's thinking he's going to get his money, and you walk in and you say, here's your $50,000, $100,000, whatever it is. If you're buying a house, maybe it's just $10,000, but whatever it is, it's non-refundable. The house is sold. So you get this if you reduce the price a few more $1,000s or a few more $100,000, whatever the scale is. And generally they will say yes, because they do not want to have to list the damn property on the market again. They know that that stuff was wrong with it, that you found is wrong with it. They know that you made your offer based on the fact that you thought the roof was good or you thought the boilers were good. So when you discover that they're bad, you deserve to get a break, you know, and there are many times that I have walked away from deals where, you know, I did spend the money was down the drain, but it was too high a price with the stuff that I found. So at the retrade stage, I let it drop. But more often than not, the owner did give me an extra break and I went on to buy it and be a happy camper. And then the final thing is profit and cash flow. This is good stuff. So we get appreciation and we get cash flow as we go along. And like shampooing your hair, which I did for this presentation because we're on Zoom and I got the computer camera right in front of me, but rinse and repeat, right? Just do it again, do it again, do it again. Okay, so identify, this comes from the plan. So it's the type of property, it's the price point, it's the location. I like what Brett said about location and, you know, picking ideal locations. I think that was bang on. And then my favorite is net operating income. It all comes down to net operating income. And this is how you analyze the cap rate. For those of you that are familiar with multifamily, you know this, but for those of you that aren't, the net operating income is the income as if you owned a property free and clear. So it doesn't take any financing into consideration. It doesn't take any capital improvements into consideration. It's just the maintenance to keep the building going, your utilities, your property taxes, your insurance, everything to operate the building. But nothing like, you know, if there's an expense one year for a new boiler or a new roof, that gets taken out of the expenses to calculate the net operating income. And so the magic of this is if you buy something with a net operating income and then say it has 10 suites that rent for $500 a month and they're empty. So you're buying like say 50 units and 10 of them are empty. Well, with the multiplier effect, like I mentioned earlier, if you can rent those 10 suites, that's an extra $5,000 a month. $500 times 10 is $5,000 a month. And generally, you know, your taxes don't change. Your insurance doesn't change, your utilities don't change a lot. That adds $5,000 a month times 12 months is $60,000 to your bottom line of net operating income. And that $60,000, if you divide it by a 6% rate of return, if the cap rates where you're investing is 6%, and it gets even better as the cap rates go down, but let's just say 6% to be conservative, then your building has gone up in value $1 million. And I've got the deal that I sold in January to prove it. I bought it. I showed my investors a spreadsheet and I said, I'm going to bring the net operating income up in 5 years up to, you know, $60,000 above what it is now. We did it. We sold it. And then COVID happened. And I was feeling very, very lucky that got that thing sold before that happened. And it was funny. It was an unsolicited offer. We were prepared to hold that building forever. It was just such a sweet building. It was a concrete building. Had an elevator, 3 stories, brick, nice part of town. And we just, realtor came unsolicited, gave us an offer we couldn't refuse. And at the last minute, the buyer wanted to retrade for $150,000. They came and said, you know, okay, we'll take it, but you got to reduce the price $150,000. We said, nope, we'll hang on to it. It's fine. You know, you came with us. We didn't really want to sell it in the first place. And then they paid full price. Yes. So that was a happy time. There are many happy times in real estate. It's funny coincidence. Okay, now I promise you I would teach you how to decide yes or no in 2 minutes or less. So here we go. This is fun. So first you look at the plan. So this is an easy way to do it. So is it the type of property I want? No. Well then go away. Like don't try and force yourself to buy the type of property that you're not comfortable buying. So it has to be the type of property. Is it the right price point? Like I've been putting offers on houses down in Seattle because my son has a job down there right now. And we're looking for a certain price point. The realtor comes to us with a different price point. We're like, no, you know, we're not looking for that price point. You know, that's an easy yes or no. Location. So it may be proximity to your job, maybe in, you know, you want proximity to a university or a hospital. For multifamily buildings, it's really good to be on busy streets because you get a lot of traffic going by and you get a lot of tenants from signage. So you might not want your little cute single family house on a busy street, but it could be that multifamily building, it's not so bad to be on a busy street. Net operating income, you ask the owner for the financials, or you ask the realtor for the financials, and you just have a quick look at the net operating income. And because you already know where you're going to invest and what type of property you're going to invest in, you know what the net operating income should be. Like in a particular city, like Southern Ontario, it should be probably 5.5%. Probably Edmonton is fairly similar. Vancouver, it's like crazy. It's like 3%. Like it's ridiculous the cap rate they get for these buildings. So just to give you an example, like at a 3% cap, if I get that same $60,000 increase in net operating income, value of my building goes up 400-fold. It goes up $2 million. Like, my God. But the trouble is, you know, at a 3% cap, like you're losing money. You're sitting in quicksand because you're going to spend more on capital expenses to keep your building up to date than that 3%. Plus you have your financing costs. So, you know, I'm not a big fan. I mean, people have made millions and millions in multifamily in Vancouver, but I just like the slow and steady, the Edmontons, the Phoenixes, where I get, you know, borrow the money at 4%, get a 6% return. There's a lot of meat there that if things go sideways, I've got some room to recover. And then there are other things like, you know, what I mentioned about the boots on the ground, you know, your strategic advantages, either you got them or you don't. So there are 5 really quick and easy yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, where you just walk away from the deal. And then this is my favorite. This is the one where you look for an owner that's a don't wanter. So a don't wanter is somebody that, you know, they might have an alligator, they might be a really bad property manager, so they have lots of vacancies. They might have been divorced, they might have a job, you know, that's been transferred, they might have lost their job, they might be empty nesters, they might have already bought a house and they have to sell this house. So you have to recognize, are they a don't wanter? So different ways you can do this. And, you know, I'm a realtor going way, way back. I don't practice as a realtor, but I keep my realtor license. I actually have a brokerage license. I have a brokerage with no realtors. So it's I shouldn't say this to James, but it's the perfect brokerage because I have no realtors, just me. And anyway, I've dealt with a lot of realtors, and some realtors don't want to tell you why the owner is selling. And this is a good thing to know. Like, why are you selling? You know, and you have to be tactful about this. You can't just like phone on a for sale by owner and they pick up the phone and you go, "Hi, this is Ralph. Why are you selling?" Then they put their back up against the wall. Or the realtor is standing there and you walk in for the showing and you know, you say to the realtor, "Hey, why is he selling?" They're like, "I can't tell you that information. I can't divulge the information, blah, blah, blah." So you got to just kind of be a little bit tactful about it. So you phone the guy up and, "Hi, this is Ralph. You know, I'm calling on the ad you have, and tell me a little bit about the house." And they'll tell you about it. You know, we've lived in it for 20 years and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, the roof is new, and, you know, they always leave something out. So you might say, "Oh, well, what kind of flooring do you have? And, you know, when did you do the appliances?" And, you know, just ask some little innocuous questions, then sort of hit them with the zing and go, "Oh, and, you know, it sounds really nice. Why are you selling?" And you say it so nicely, they go, "Oh, because, you know, I got my job transfer, getting divorced, blah, blah, blah." And to me, that's like, oh, these are people that are don't wanters. They have to sell. But, you know, you get the ones that also say, "Well, my neighbor sold down the street for like a record price. If I get higher than that, man, I'm selling. Otherwise, they're going to carry me out of here." Like, then I walk away, like step away from the building. You know, like this is not going to be a deal. I want a deal where they have some kind of reason to sell, because at some point they're going to sell at market value. Because particularly in this environment we are right now, nobody's going to get over market value. You know, like chances are we're going to get under market value if we play our cards right. But the best way to play your cards is find somebody that's a don't wanter. And if you're really cheeky, if you want to really find out if they're a don't wanter, you see the ad and you phone them up and say, "Hey, you know, sounds good. How about I can only come tomorrow at 6 a.m. to see it." And if they go, "No way, you can't come at 6 a.m. I'm going to be asleep." But if they say, "Okay," then you phone them back, like say, "Okay, see you at 6 a.m. Then you phone them back. "Oh, you know, it turns out I can come at 10 a.m. You know, but I just wanted to see if you'd show it at 6 a.m. Because if they're going to show it at 6 a.m., you know they're definitely a don't wanter and they're motivated to sell and they're a little bit desperate. So just something to try. Here we go with the due diligence. So this is the meat that I promised you. So what we have to do is 3 steps. The first one is the financial and the operational analysis. So we look at the numbers, um, and we decide whether, we can get the proper financing, if the rents and the property manager, all that sort of thing to go with operations is in order. Then we do a physical inspection where we start to spend money. It's important that you do the financial and the operational analysis before, so you avoid spending unnecessary money, because if it fails the test in the first stage, you don't want to go to the second stage. And like I say, you definitely don't want to go to the third stage where you're starting to get mortgage broker fees and appraisals if it doesn't pass the first 2. You're always looking at cost and time. So the financial and the operational analysis generally doesn't cost you anything. You're just looking at the statements that the owner gives you. You're looking at the location, figuring out, does this look like it could be a go or it's not a go? And if it is a go, you got to tie it up. Then you do the physical asset inspection. And this is for single family houses. So it's not very expensive to do this, but you can still save yourself, a few $100s by just doing it in the proper sequence. Do the physical inspection, and then you do go get your financing. And the nice thing about financing is, unless you're sort of a bad credit risk, is generally you don't have to pay the mortgage anything, that the lender will pay the mortgage. So it might be $500 to $1,600 if you're getting a building inspection and you have to go get a special B mortgage, or have a creative mortgage broker. But that's not a lot of money. It's not a big deal. But when you get to multifamily, the physical asset could be, to get that inspected could be $2,500 to $10,000, depending on the size of the building. And then for the financing, again, you're looking at $5,000 to $20,000. So I've had deals where I've walked away from $15,000, $20,000, and I don't regret it. I always say, even if you are spending this money, you just have to be prepared that, over time, you're going to have the odd one that you have to walk away from, but don't stick in the deal just because you spent $20,000. Because the particular one that I walked away from, it was in Terrace, and the people that ended up buying it found asbestos, and they went bankrupt. Like, the building just got emptied and never filled again, and they had to strip all the asbestos out, and it was just a nightmare. And we just had this spidey sense that something is not quite right. And we walked away, and we left, I think, $20,000 on the table, and it was the best $20,000 I ever spent. So you have to know what the cash required is to purchase. So what the down payment is, that's great. But think about what a year of insurance is going to be, because typically you're going to have to pay that up front. So for a building that's a couple $1 million, you're probably going to pay $3,000 or so a year insurance. You've got to pay that when you close. So you got to have that insured for the 12 months paying when you close. The annual taxes, that's a OWI, and generally you have to pay at least half of those up front. You may have some repairs that you discovered that you have to have money for, and then always have an unplanned reserve. So this is important when you're analyzing a deal. Just remember that it's not just the money for the down payment. You got to have some other money on hand. And then think about the net operating income while you own the property. So you've got the rental income. You may have some vacancy. You may have some miscellaneous income like laundry or storage, things you can get some extra money for. But keep in mind all these expenses. So when you've done your analysis, you've looked at utilities, you haven't, usually owners are a little bit wily when it comes to repairs and maintenance. Like, it's usually higher than what they claim the repairs and maintenance is. So be careful with that. Talk to your building inspector about what he thinks it likely will be. Taxes, insurance, management fees, you want to negotiate that before you remove subject conditions. Always identify who's going to be the property manager and make sure that they're a damn good property manager. You don't want to be buying a building with bad property management, because it'll be a nightmare. So that's the most important thing on the list. Legal and accounting is expensive. I've had my run-ins with lawyers. It drives me nuts. Always ask them what their fee is going to be before they do it. I got burned twice this year, one in selling a building and once when I was financing a building, where the lawyer's like, I should have called the Law Society. I mean, it was just horrific. Like, a bill that should have been $5,000 and they charged me $15,000. Are you kidding me? Like, oh. So I just, I'm one of these that believe in karma, like what goes around comes around. And, it's just, make sure you ask beforehand. Like, this was, first time it happens, Shame on you. Second time it happens, shame on me. Unfortunately, this was two different lawyers that did it to me, but I'm never, ever, ever going to use a lawyer again until I get it up front what the cost is going to be. Because, yeah, I don't know what they do. Like, how can they live with themselves, do that kind of crap? Anyway, take a deep breath. So advertising is kind of nice because we can just put ads on Craigslist. If you buy your building on a busy street, you can just put the ad out in front of the building and get quite a few leads with that. Ask your tenants to recommend somebody to be their neighbor. There's always programs to do that to get tenants in. Mortgage, try and lock down that interest rate. It's very sketchy because if you tie up a building 6 months ahead of time, they generally won't lock in the rate for, say, 2 months before the closing. So you just have to hope rates stay down. But I think the general consensus right now is that rates are going to stay flat to down for the foreseeable future. So that's a good thing. And then make sure you have money for reserves and replacements and, any other contingencies. I like to keep, probably in terms of a year's operating expenses, probably about 25% of a year's operating expenses in a contingency fund just for a rainy day. And I'm upfront with my investors when I buy that this is what we're going to do. And we put it in the shareholders agreement that if the reserve drops below a certain amount, we're all going to kick in some money to make sure that that reserve is at that comfortable level, because you don't want to be in a situation where something goes wrong and you need cash and then you're chasing your investors to kick in some cash, and some kick in and some don't, and it's a nightmare. And then finally, I always begin with the end in mind. So I think about what the exit strategy is going to be. Always have, how long are you going to hold this property? If it is going to be a 5-year flip, how much is it going to cost in selling commissions? And how's that going to affect your investors? Funny thing about this, cost to sell a property, the one I mentioned, Coulter Meadows, where we made $1 million in a month. You're so excited to make $1 million in a month. And then all of a sudden, you do it, and then you get hit with all these things like there's a fee for breaking the mortgage. Like, oh crap, and our fee for breaking the mortgage is like $150,000 because it's like interest rate differential for a couple of years, and you don't think about this stuff, but hey, you're still making $1 million, so there's a little bit of a fee for breaking the mortgage. But it's better if you know these things ahead of time. So look to see what the mortgage prepayment penalty is going to be before you sell. Look at what the sales commission is going to be. What are the tax implications going to be? In the US, if you sell a property in less than a year, they don't treat it as a capital gain. You get treated as income, and it's significantly higher than your capital gains taxation rate. So if I had to go back in time, I would not have sold that property. I would have just held on to it for a year, probably would have gone up another $1 million. But, I'm getting my money's worth just from telling the story. I can say I made $1 million in a month. So what the hell? Not many people have done that. It's happy, happy. Here's a picture of one of the properties we bought in Phoenix in 2011. It was called Siesta Villas, and they were nice little sort of patio homes, you call them, 69 of them. And the lady was a widow. Her husband had passed away, and she just was not a property manager. Like, if any tenant looked at her crossways, she would evict them. And she had 30% vacancy when we took this place over. So we found it because we were looking at other properties, and a maintenance guy said, hey, I think the lady wants to sell down the street. So my partner Dave went over there, and we bought it for $4 million, and he negotiated a $3 million vendor take back mortgage. Like, never hurts to ask, right? Because she just didn't like managing, but she wanted a return on her money. So, we gave her like a 6% return on $3 million. And then we did our magic. And this is, what's that beep for? Was that me? Anyway, this is the magic. So you get a spreadsheet. That yellow line is the best line, and that's the NOI. So when we bought this building, the NOI was $236,000. When we sold it, it was $394,000. That was in a matter of 3 years. And the way we got to that, up on the top, you see the rents. So they started at $650 and $790 for 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Year one, we didn't change them too much, but we got the vacancy. If you look at the vacancy rate, it's in line 24. went from 33% down to 15%. So we cut the vacancy in half, kept the rents the same. Year 2, we cut the vacancy down by another 30%, down to 10%. And we were able to raise the rents to $50 on the 2 bedrooms and about $60 on the 3 bedrooms. And then year 3, another $50 on the 2 bedrooms, another $25 on the 3 bedrooms. So not huge rent increases, but look at that vacancy. It went from 33% down to 7%. So our expense ratio, 39%, went down to 36%, which is a nice, healthy number. I didn't really get into expense ratios, but when you're buying a multifamily building, look at what the total expenses are versus gross income. And if the expense ratio is like 20%, you know they are smoking crack. You know, that's way too low. The expense ratio should probably be about 40%. It's bad when it's 50%, although it usually means that you can make some money by cutting expenses. So look for something in the 40%, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more. That's kind of the ideal. But if it's excessively high, that probably means there's room for you to fix it, and you might be able to get a significant increase in net operating income. Or it's just a turkey and you should run. So when you see those ratios, it just means you have to look for further evidence. So you look at how come their expenses are so high? What are they doing? You know, and if you can come to the conclusion that it's something you can fix, then that's a keeper. That's the type of building you want to buy. So the value of the building, because we increased the net operating income from $236,000 to $394,000, went to $6.5 million from $4.5 million. So that's pretty sweet. Went up $2 million in about 3 years. So hallelujah. And it's not rocket science. It's just going in there, good management. We lowered the vacancy, kept the rents the same, but we just improved the tenant mix, and gradually better and better and better as the years go by. This is the famous Coulter Meadows. So the funny thing is, so it was 71 units. We're all excited. We're going to renovate them. We're going to do all this stuff. And then Grand Canyon University comes along and offers us this crazy offer. And then they went and they bulldozed the whole place. So Jesus, we think we're so smart. But anyway, so they just ended up rezoning it and building high rises. Like, oh, you know, makes me kind of weep. I wish we had just hung on to this property, but oh well. This I keep in my office because it shows the price that Collier sold it for, $5.4 million. We bought it for like $4 million or something. So it always warms the cockles of my heart when I see that little sign about our Collier is just closed. Like, hallelujah. So in summary, for the due diligence, we want to create a schedule and give yourself lots of time. You have to do this sequence of analyzing the numbers, and then you go in and do the physical inspection, and then you do the financing. Everyone is guilty until proven innocent. So do not assume anything. You want to make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted, and that, you know, the property manager is going to do what he says he's going to do. The appraisal works out. You know, everything in the physical inspection, whether it be boilers or roof or windows or building envelope or foundation, plumbing, electrical, all this stuff. Like, everybody's guilty until proven innocent. And this stuff is getting more and more expensive to fix. I mean, it's crazy what contractors charge now, you know, just to do some little repairs. So you want to make sure that you're not going to be stuck in this big mire of, you know, expenses to bring something up to code. Be physically present yourself for all inspections. Don't take somebody's word for it. Walk through it with them. Ask questions. You can never ask enough questions. And when in doubt, get a quote, and preferably 2 quotes. So if they tell you can do something, it's going to cost like $10,000, go get a quote. Go get a couple of quotes and just make sure, because it could end up quite easily being $15,000. Who knows? And find out when the guy can fix it. You know, so, sure, he gives you a quote, but then you say, so can you come Tuesday? I can probably fit you in like November, something like that. So find out when they can do it. Okay, so you get the property lead. This is the first thing. And then you review the documents and the data to make sure that it's something that you want to pursue. Then if it's good, you get it tied up under contract. You go take a physical look at the property. This is an important one. So I buy a house, or I mentioned that I bought an apartment building in Ontario, and I'm sitting on my couch in Vancouver. When I find it, I'm just on my laptop and I see ICI, and I send an email to the realtor. Because it's Ontario, they're 3 hours ahead, so he's sound asleep. So in the morning I wake up and, the realtor gets back to me. And sure. He says, you can have it. And I'm like, what? He says, yeah. He said, it just came on the market, and this other guy had it tied up and he dropped it, so it's yours. And I'm like, what kind of realtor are you that you, like, the poor owner, like, there's no competition here. But he kept insisting that, it was mine, but I had no contract. And I told him, I'm not flying to Ontario unless I have a physical contract. I want a signed contract. And like the owner's in the Bahamas or something, bone fishing, and, the other owner's someplace else. And so I finally just had to book my ticket. And I remember I'm at YVR, Vancouver International Airport, and I'm sitting in my seat on the plane to go to Chicago, because this is another funny story. It's cheaper to fly to Ontario via Chicago than it is to go to Toronto. Don't ask me why. But I go through customs, and the customs guy goes, so where are you spending the night tonight? Oh, in Ontario. He's like, what? So I'm flying to Chicago, and then I go to Detroit, and then I drive, and hey, I'm in Ontario, and a lot cheaper than if I fly to Toronto. But anyways, the point is that I'm getting on that plane, and I'm just sitting down, and I finally get the text from the realtor that the contract is signed. Like, I'm just freaking out. Like, this is going to be a total waste of time. I fly all the way across the country, and somebody else is going to buy it out from under me. Like, I don't think so. So get it tied up under contract, step 3. Go look at the property, step 4. So many people say, I'm going to go look at the property, and then I'm going to get it under contract. No, 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 no. Doesn't cost you a cent to write a contract. You put some money at deposit, yes, but if you back out of the property, you get the deposit back. So it doesn't cost you a penny. Tie it up first, then go look at it. And 100% go look at it. Never, never, never buy a property that you don't personally look at. It's crazy. That's just asking for trouble. And ask lots of questions. If you don't have 10, you haven't done enough work. So lots of questions. You got to have questions. If you don't have questions, there's something wrong. This is the house slide that I'm repeating because I just want to drill it into you. So target where you're going to buy. The where is totally important, and find the deals once you know exactly what you're looking for. Be good at evaluating them. Look at that net operating income. Just look at the price point. If you've been looking at deals and making offers on deals, and deals have fallen through, you know what good value is. Write the offer, and you can negotiate more later. Do your due diligence, get your financing, and then go back and retrade hard. Try and get the price down some more, because you're in a strong negotiating position. You've done all your due diligence. You're sitting there with a non-refundable check. The guy will buckle. They will give you a little bit. So ask for a little bit. And then rinse and repeat. Profit and cash flow, repeat. Profit and cash flow, repeat. I like that. Should write a song, eh, James? So primary focus during due diligence is to get as quickly and inexpensively as possible to know. This sounds funny, but it's true. Like, seriously, you're probably going to say no to deals 10 times for every one you say yes to. So you might as well get to know quickly and inexpensively, because the faster you do, the faster you're going to get to yes. So if you get lucky and the first deal ends up being a yes, hallelujah. Just expect, the laws of percentages, probably the next 20 will be no. I don't mean to depress you, but it's a numbers game. Just look at it that way. You've got costs and time, and the faster that you can get to know, the more you're going to save in costs, and the more time you're going to have to go look for a good deal. So pay attention to that. Now, this is me in April 2015. This house had total curb appeal. We called it the toilet house. So I go to this little town in Ontario, and I'm a BC boy. This is like April. And I wake up in the morning, and there's snow on the ground. Like, what the hell? So I still bought houses. I mean, those little houses there were $100,000, 3-bedroom houses, 50-foot lots, full garages for $100,000, rent for $1,200. I'll buy those every day of the week and twice on Tuesday. But I had to pose for this picture, because how many times, like, we actually bought that house with the toilets in front. And guess what we call it? We call it the toilet house. But 626 Cherry Drive. and still own it. And I should have the nice picture of it, that after we got it all fixed up, I have this beautiful picture of flowering bushes and green grass. But anyway, so one other story about this is, I pretty much did these houses in Ontario just on a dare, because 5 years ago, I could have retired. I didn't need to go buy 5 houses in Ontario. But what really bugs me is when people don't get into action. So I did it just to show that it could be done. And at the Real Estate Action Group, if any of you that were in the audience then are on this call right now, I stood up in front of the group and I said, you might think I'm crazy, but I'm buying these little houses in Ontario. And I said, this is my plan. I'm going to buy 5 little houses. And I showed the cash flow and I said, this is exactly what I'm going to be doing. So it was almost like, Babe Ruth sitting at the plate and saying, I'm going to take this ball, I'm going to hit it over the fence right over there. Like, it just was so satisfying to just say, this system works. Like, I don't have to do this system. Like, I'd make more money going and buying 2 apartment buildings than doing these houses. But I just wanted to prove that it could be done. And we did all the creative things. Like, we bought a house and fixed it up and then refinanced it so we had no down payment, because the equity that we had put in from fixing it up made it worth like $30,000 or $40,000 more, and we only paid $100,000 for it. So we basically got the house 100% financed. It was back in the day when you could still get the debt coverage ratio mortgages. So you go to bless CIBC, they have our mortgages, but we didn't need income. Just based on the income from the property, they gave us like 80% loan to value. And I think, to buy 7 houses, we only must have put down maybe about $50,000 each for all of them. I mean, it was incredible, but it works, and you just have to get out there and do it. And so I am proud of the fact that, I'm a shining example. I like to inspire young investors. And so, I hope this little talk has inspired you. I just want to finish with just saying, never give up on your dreams. Like, even if everybody that says it's silly, that it's crazy, go out to more events like the Mogul Mastermind or whatever real estate event it is, where other people are doing better than you. Other people are, enthusiastic. Like, so many times I hear, you go to a real estate course and you get all pumped up about real estate, and you go back to the office and you sit around the water cooler, people go, are you crazy? Like, what are you doing? Like, real estate? Like, you could get hurt. Like, so many dreams are crushed that way. So never, never, never give up on your dreams. If you've got a dream, it's not a crazy thing. Just meet the people that are going to take you to your dreams, identify, select, and analyze deals. And as I say at the beginning, I've done lots and lots of deals. It's a numbers game. Not every deal is perfect, but if you have these certain rules that I've taught you tonight, you will be risk averse. I'm still active. I still do multifamily buildings. Like I said, I tied up a 17-unit building today. And just in closing, James and I are doing a little business venture ourselves. And this is one of these things where we're going to prove a cash flow system. And we're looking for some young guns, some people that want to get involved and make some money in a really exciting venture. And if you're interested, I'm going to give you a number that you can send me a text message, and you can just say that you're interested. And no obligation, just send me a text and say, yes, Ralph, I'm interested. Just your email and your name would be wonderful. And the text number is 778-770-2012. And maybe, James, you can type that into the comments, because I'm still in my show, so I don't have the comments bracket here. But
the chat window, Ralph. And once I take you off the stage and do my finishing comments, then I will. If you want to put your contact info,
there's Q&A.
Yeah, so let's maybe go Q&A. If anybody has a question for
where's the chat? Is that the chat? The Q&A?
There's Q&A, and then right next to that should be one that says chat.
New share. Participants 40. Screen sharing. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions for Ralph, let's chat them in, or use the chat window.
There we go. 20 chats. Okay. So I'm going to put Ralph 778-770-2012. There we go. And email case.ralph@gmail.com. And I think you guys got my first and last name. There. All right. Oh, wait a second.
Ralph's here.
It's going to Mogul Realty Group. Do I want to send it to everyone?
Jen, if you can transfer that over to the rest of the group, she's got you covered, Ralph.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so I'm going to jump back in here. So Ralph, thank you so much for that presentation. You know, you really went above and beyond and gave us not just a little detail, but you gave us the blueprint, the Ralph Case blueprint for making a lot of money on a lot of real estate. So I hope you guys got a lot of value out of that, because Ralph is a guy that has walked the walk. He's talking the talk right now, but I mean, that track record speaks for itself. He's made great money on a lot of real estate deals, and you know, there's a way to pick the good ones, and there's a way to throw out the bad ones. And Ralph, I'm absolutely thrilled that that you're able to do that. And yeah, I mean, Ralph's been a mentor of mine. We're partnering on a deal here. So we've got a cool business, so make sure you reach out to him so he can give you the details. And yeah, I mean, I'm just thrilled to be the boots on the ground, but I'm also thrilled that Ralph, you know, I mean, Ralph could have retired 20 times over by now. So that's one of the cool things about chatting with Ralph, is if you ever get a chance, he, you know, the reason we get along so well is because at his core, he's just a big real estate nerd, like what the rest of us are. And he loves talking real estate. He loves doing deals, and he does it for the joy of the deal, and he does it for the love of real estate. And just like he said, he really does have a genuine appreciation for passing that knowledge on to the next generation. And, you know, all of his partners are kind of more around my age. We're a bit younger, and, you know, I mean, we learn more from him than just in doing the deal than anything else. So it's a real pleasure to have you come speak, Ralph. And, you know, thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thanks to Ralph for sharing that blueprint. We do record these meetings, so everybody who put your email in the chat window, you're going to get an email within about a week, with the videos and a copy of those analysis sheets.
I'm just reading the comments. 1 hour real estate education the best 1 hour real estate education I've ever received. Thank you, AJ Thomas.
That's awesome. Great.
I just riff. I got so many stories. I had no idea how long I was going to talk. I did go a little bit over time, but you're used to me doing that.
Of course.
And
yeah, no, we love you for it. So
it's really funny when you're here talking and there's no response, you know, so it's like, you know, I'm booming along. I'm like, I wonder if anybody's even listening to me, you know?
I know.
But I'm just in my own little world. Like, I'm so absorbed with real estate. I love real estate so much. I don't really care. I'll just sit here and talk about it. Yeah, when I'm in an old folks home, I'll just sit and give real estate seminars to myself.
I think Ralph will be hanging out in one of the most luxurious old folks homes on the planet with how you.
I'm going to be skiing at Whistler.
That's right. Oh yeah, with the ski season getting cut short, we got to make it up in 2020 by getting a double days in. So thank you, everybody. Our next topic at the last Mogul Wednesday of July is going to be joint venturing. So Ralph gave us a lot of tidbits about joint venturing. That's a preview. We're going to be talking a lot more about it in July. Ralph, we appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in from Vancouver.
Can I just come in July and just listen? I think it's
absolutely, yeah. Sid, I mean, if you come in July, we're probably going to rope you into some of the presentations because you've got more advice to give than anybody.
I won't take up the whole program though. I'll just like talk for 10 minutes or something.
That'll be awesome. That'll be awesome. I love it. All right, everybody.
We're gonna some beach.
Oh well, hey, yeah. I mean, enjoy it. So everybody, we're gonna conclude. Thanks for being part of the community. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in July. And everybody be safe out there, and make the right choices so that we can get this COVID thing behind us and we can actually start meeting up in person, because I think that's one thing that I'm missing, real networking, and I know a lot of you are too. So we're looking forward to getting back to proper networking. Thanks to Brett as well. He did an awesome job. Everybody, have an awesome time out there. We'll see you next time. Last Wednesday of the month, talking joint ventures. So, to circle back to a comment we made at the beginning, it's going to be a good time for joint ventures. You want to raise that capital now because the deals are going to really start popping up in the fall. So we're looking forward to that. Have an awesome one, everybody, and see you next time.